So good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible? Could somebody confirm?
We can hear you.
So, on behalf of the Niti Aayog and the World Food Program Millet Mainstreaming Initiative, I welcome all of you. And Madam Neelam Patel, who is our Senior Advisor, Agriculture and Allied Sector Vertical, she had to attend to an urgent meeting which has been called by the senior officials. So may be possible that she will be joining later in the workshop. The objective of today's workshop is to provide us a perspective on the Niti Aayog and World Food Program's initiative on mapping and exchange of good practices. So the current partnership, the current initiative on the millet mainstreaming is WFP's and Niti Aayog's initiative, which is under the climate resilient practices for improved food and nutrition security. As we all know that the government of India has celebrated 2018 domestically as the National Year of Millets, and 2023, the government of India has proposed in the UN, and 2023 has been selected as the International Year of Millets next year. So with this background, we are very happy to partner with our colleagues from Invest India, and I welcome all the colleagues from Invest India in this program, Madam Annapurna Shankar, Ajanekya, and Harshvardhan on behalf of WFP and Niti Aayog Millet Ministry Program. And with this, what we would be doing today would be we have structured this workshop in a form that not many startups have been functional in India. The private agencies, those who are working on the agricultural value chain, and Invest India and WFP and Niti Aayog here would like to reach out to all the startups and agricultural value chains, functional in agricultural value chains, and we would be making our presentation in terms of what exactly the mapping and exchange of good practices is all about, and this is currently live streamed, and it is also being seen in the public domain, and that would be a point of reference for the agricultural value chain startups and private agencies to come back and refer in case of any difficulty and doubt. So this is how we are going to move ahead and iron out all the details of the mapping and exchange of good practices on millets. So with this, I would request representatives from Invest India to make the keynote address and allow the audience to see the landscape of startups and agriculture value chain and their own work on these intersection. So with this, may I invite Madam Annapurna Shankar to deliver the keynote address, please. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. I am Annapurna Shankar, the Sector Lead for Agriculture at Invest India. I'd like to start by thanking Niti Aayog and the World Food Program India for taking the initiative to devise a strategy to scale up production of millets in the country. I'm here today to talk to you about what Invest India does and the government's efforts to scale up production of millets in the country. Invest India works under the aegis of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry with the core mandate to promote and facilitate investments in the country. We have a team of domain and functional experts that provide sector and state-specific inputs, handholding support to investors, both domestic and foreign, through the entire investment cycle from the pre-investment planning stage to investor aftercare. All facilitation and hand-holding support to investors under the Make in India program is being provided by Invest India on a pro bono basis. From assisting with land acquisition to highlighting the infrastructure projects for investment, showcasing cutting-edge innovation and startups and world-class research, the various teams at Invest India offer each new investor the panoramic scope of the India opportunities and way to navigate it. We operate across various sectors with dedicated investment promotion and facilitation desks in most ministries and departments. Additionally, we've been working with various state departments as well to assist them in grounding of investments and identifying investable projects. Invest India also happens to be the implementation agency for the Startup India initiative. Since its inception in January 2016, the government has recognized more than 75,000 startups spread across 647 districts in 30 states and 7 union territories. Invest India has a dedicated team working in agriculture, food processing, animal husbandry, dairy, and the fishery sectors. As mentioned earlier, we do have investment facilitation desks at the relevant ministries and departments for these sectors. The agriculture team at Invest India, apart from focusing on investment facilitation activities, also has sectoral specialists working with FPOs. We support them on capacity building initiatives, scheme integration, and help them with market linkages. We also work very closely with industry, providing policy recommendations to the government based on our interaction with various players in the sector. So I personally believe that India was one of the first countries to recognize the nutritional benefits of millets, which are also known as nutri-cereals, owing to their health benefits. Realizing the need to market them better, we celebrated the National Year of Millets in 2018. India is the top millet producing country in the world and contributes to approximately 20% of the millets produced globally. India also accounts for 60% of production of bajra in the world and approximately 27% of jowar. There's about 500 startups that work across the millets value chain. Additionally, the Indian Institute of Millet Research under the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, which is now known as the Remunerative Approaches for Agriculture and Allied Sector Rejuvenation, or RAFTAR, has incubated another 250 startups. These startups focus mainly on primary processing, ready-to-eat, ready-to-cook products such as breakfast cereals, millet coffee. There's pizza flours, porridge, and flakes, and a bunch of other products. Invest India has also been working very closely with the Indian Institute of Millets Research and NutriHub, which is a technology business incubator catering exclusively to startups that exist in the nutri-cereal space. We've been working extremely closely with Dr. Dayakar Rao, who's the CEO at the IIMR NutriHub, and he's been kind enough to support all of Invest India's endeavors in the millet sector. With the aim of creating global and domestic demand for millets, the government of India proposed to the United Nations to declare 2023 as the International Year of Millets, a proposal that 72 countries supported. I remember at the time, there was this event that the Permanent Mission in New York did, and the Director of Plant Production and Protection at the FAO had expressed hope that the International Year of Millets will promote diversity, ecological benefits, and nutritional value of millets among producers, value chain actors, and consumers, and encourage decision makers to improve agri-food systems in the countries. The Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare under the Indian government has been implementing a submission on nutri-cereals under the National Food Security Mission. The aim of this program is to enhance production and productivity of millets, including bajra, and the government's efforts have led to a rise in production of millets from around 14.52 million tons in 2015-16 to about 17.96 million tons in 2020 to 21. State governments, too, at their level, have been promoting the cultivation of millets under the RAFTAR program, which I had mentioned earlier. They do it with the approval of state-level sanctioning committees, which are constituted under the chairmanship of the Chief Secretary of the states. The department has been engaging with states to develop tailor-made plans for each state with regards to millet production. Some of the states have submitted the interventions that were required. I mean, as per their understanding in the value chain of millets, whereas some states are still developing their inputs. The whole idea behind devising this plan of action was to develop a bottom-up approach, as opposed to taking a top-down approach and just telling states that, okay, this is what you need to do. We're trying to understand where they are facing issues, and we're trying to give solutions based on each state's differences. This activity obviously is being undertaken in close coordination with the IIMR. The Ministry of Food Processing Industries too has come up with a PLI scheme, or a production linked incentive scheme, for millets based products. As we're aware, the aim of the PLI schemes is to create global food champions and promote Indian brands of food products by providing financial incentives to modernize and enhance the competitiveness of the Indian food processing industry. The PLI scheme for millet based products has been announced with an investment outlay of 800 crore rupees for the year 2022 to 27. The food processing team, obviously, at Invest India has been working very closely with the ministry for the implementation of this program as well. Despite all these efforts, though, the sector still faces certain challenges in terms of production and adaptability among consumers and cultivating the taste for millets. I mean, I'm quite sure all of us at some point in our lives have just said that bajra ki roti is not what we want to eat at all. However, I believe with the efforts of Niti Aayog and the World Food Programme India, we will be able to develop a robust strategy to address the issues pertaining to the mainstreaming of millets. Invest India would be happy to facilitate policy support with the ministry department based on any policy recommendations made by the stakeholders today. I mean, at the end, I just want to say that Invest India really appreciates the efforts Niti Aayog and World Food Programme India are putting in towards bringing various stakeholders together to promote millets in the country, and we'll be willing to support the initiative in whichever way possible. I look forward to hearing the deliberations that are planned for today.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Annapurna. And it's quite heartening to see how over the last 5 years, the startup ecosystem have evolved, and accordingly, the response from various ministries and initiatives, both from the central level of the government of India and the state level. And this is definitely the efforts of various players in the millet value chain. For example, Indian Institute of Millet Research, its NutriHub, our own ICAR institutions, the role of various KVKs, role of various ministries like MOPP and other Startup India campaign. These are all building a lot of momentum. And earlier this year, we have also under the leadership of Ministry of Agriculture, have organized International Expo and participated. The theme was millet startups there. So this is all very conducive environment, very enabling environment where the agricultural value chain, private sector, as well as startups, those who are on the ground and grappling up with the problems and coming up with innovative solutions, and also engaged in various stages of agriculture value chain, not only on the consumption side, but also on the production side and productization side as well. So with this, I take this opportunity to welcome our colleague from the Niti side, Madam Saloni, and invite her to give her address, give her remarks, please. Madam Saloni, please.
Hi, a very good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Saloni Bhutani. I am a young professional in the agriculture vertical of Niti Aayog. So I'm sure that my partner, Mr. Pranay Sinha, might have given the whole rationale behind this workshop. We all know that all our departments of the government are taking their making efforts in making International Year of Millets 23 successful. Niti Aayog also is trying its best by taking certain measures like developing policy framework for the government schemes, as well as carrying out studies on nutritional value of millets. And one of the initiatives that we have taken to promote millets is to sign a SOI with World Food Program, where we are trying to mainstream millets in Asia as well as Africa via this mapping and exchange guarantee program of good practices in millets mainstreaming. So this whole initiative comprises of two components, where we have launched this web portal, which is inviting entries in three categories, namely millet value chain, millet mainstreaming, and millet recipe. Um, and all applicants, whether they are from the production, whether they are from the government or they are from multilateral or bilateral agency or FPO, startup, self-help groups, any individual farmer, and even at a household level, any person, or even at the lower level of administration, district, block panchayat, person as can also apply, and they can submit their good practices, which will help us develop a compendium of good practices, which is obviously good, a platform which is going to help us share knowledge and build capacity. We all the stakeholders can learn from each other, whether they are states or we can learn from success stories of various individuals which developed a self-help group, and now they are successfully functioning as a startup, and they are very well renowned now, and to the extent that they're supplying their products in five-star hotels and having a great turnover as well, starting from scratch, where they didn't have any, especially women. So one important aspect of millets is that it is a woman's crop, that it is generally women are the ones which are important criteria in the millet value chain, whether it is in the cultivation or the cooking or the processing, etc., or the branding and packaging as well. So these are and the other aspect of this MEGP initiative is that we are going to try our best to work with the inline ministries which we have, whether it is Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare and MOFP and Ministry of Corporation, etc., and try to scale up the idea and help others replicate the ideas of the successful people in the millet value chain. That's all from my side. My partner, Mr. Pranay Sinha, will be. Just to give you a brief background about these various workshops that we are conducting, we are having a continuous technical workshops with states as well as other organizations that are working in millets, and in West India being our important partner, which is going to help us bring entries from startups in the field of millets, which are a very important stakeholder. So we look forward to support of Invest India in collaborating us with startups, and they encourage them to submit their entries on our portal, which I will be later showing what our portal looks like and what the application form looks like. And before that, Mr. Pranay Sinha will give a detailed presentation on what the whole millet mainstreaming framework is like. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Saloni. So now we would be moving ahead with our next agenda item, that is to give a glimpse of our millet mainstreaming framework and how the MEGP initiative is linked with that millet mainstreaming framework. I hope my slides are visible. Could somebody confirm?
We can see your side, sir.
Thanks a lot. So today's workshop is to engage agricultural value chain startups and private sector agencies, uh, agricultural entrepreneurs. And it's from that perspective, we have tried to customize this module. And as we all know, that mapping and exchange of good practices initiatives for millet mainstreaming is not only for India, but it's also for the countries of Asia and Africa. So the startups across India and beyond India are eligible to participate in this process of mapping and exchange of good practices submission. So before getting into the nitty-gritty, we would like to provide an overview that why millets have become a crop which is discussed a lot, not only in the policy circle, but beyond the policy circle, and especially in the terms of climate change and recurrent drought and various temperature rise. So we see that how it's impacting on the food and nutrition insecurity of poor individuals. And this is despite growth in the global food production, supply, and distribution. The climate change has posed and will continue to pose a risk to nutrition and food security because agriculture has always been climate dependent. And with varied weather patterns observed across, it is becoming more vulnerable in the current times. Further, the distorted weather patterns and global temperature rise, this is ending up having extreme events becoming more frequent. And this has led, these events are hampering food and nutrition security of millions of vulnerable populations, especially smallholder farmers. So it is in this background, the millets, which are often termed as nutri-cereals, contribute substantially to the food and nutrition security and are poised to be the crops of the future, being the climate smart crop. As Saloni just mentioned, our efforts of outreach to reach various stakeholders and the government department, the NGOs, the farmer producer organizations, the cooperatives, individual startups like today. There are various stakeholders, those who are participating in the millet value chain. And because of the 5 benefits which millets offers, it provides a team and when value all the stakeholders. These benefits are on the food security side, on the nutrition security side, on the economic security side, on the climate resilience side, and it provides safety from disease. We have to understand that there are demand and supply side factors which are constraining the millet value chain in a geography and a space. The demand side constraints, the increasing urbanization and per capita incomes are changing our consumer tastes and preferences. It's at the same time the poor social status conferred to millet compared to other crops, and also the lack of traditional knowledge to prepare millets, especially sorghum. These are making it less demanding in certain times. The lower shelf life of millet, the inclusion of rice and wheat at a larger scale in our public distribution system, whereas millets have not been accorded the same status in the PDS over last decades because of its green revolution, because of the impact of green revolution. So these are some of the constraints which are providing the demand side factors. On the supply side, the lack of industrial demand for value addition and millet products discourages farmers from cultivating millets. At the same time, the low profitability and low remuneration for millet vis-a-vis competing crops also are one of the factors where the smallholders are not preferring or diversifying or diversified to other crops. The price incentives and input subsidies are not in favor of millet as it is favoring the production of rice and wheat. The lack of access to quality seeds, inadequate infrastructure such as processing technologies, and unique milling equipment to address the total value chain are also providing constraints in this. So it is in this background, as we mentioned earlier, the NITI Aayog and the World Food Programme have joined hands to support the millet mainstreaming through facilitation of knowledge exchange and capacity strengthening within and outside India. And for that, we are in our first phase creating a compendium of good practices across millets value chain in the states of India and countries in Asia and Africa, and also providing a scale-up strategy. So the current today's discussion on the second component of that, which is the development of compendium of good practices around millets mainstreaming in priority states. Our first component is preparation of scaling up strategy, which we are preparing with in close cooperation with all the state governments and central line ministries. The timeline: on 19th of July last month, the MAGP initiative was launched by the Honorable Vice Chairman of the NITI Aayog and in presence of other dignitaries. From 25th of July till 18th of September, we are going to organize a series of state workshops as well as national and international events to solicit applications. So far, we have organized 4 workshops with the state governments and also organizing workshop with various ministries, for example, with the MOPI on the one district, one product millet districts. And today's event is for the startup and so on and so forth. And last day for the submission of these applications are 18th of September. The shortlisting of top 10 entries in each category is going to be by 15th of October. The presentation of shortlisted entries and announcement of winners would be done by 30th of October. And then we will be organizing a regional conference and we'll be launching the Good Practices Compendium by the end of the 4th week of November. And we aim to establish a knowledge management and networking platform by the end of December 2022. So these activities we are going to accomplish in the run-up to the International Year of Millets celebration next year. And from next year onwards, there will be more and more knowledge exchanges between various states, various stakeholders, and also between developing countries from Africa and Asia. So I would like to draw your kind attention on the millet mainstreaming framework. At the core of this, you would see there are 6 dimensions which are various stages of value chain. One is production. Second, storage and transportation, processing, packaging and branding, distribution, and consumption. So there are 6 dimensions which forms the core of that value chain. And then there are 5 dimensions which are mainstreaming dimensions. Mainstreaming, we mean the additionality provided by various stakeholders with an intent to plan and aim and achieve a desired result. And here in this case, we would like to bring millet back to the menu and also revisit our own 40 or 50 years back of millet cultivation when we were having much higher hectarage or acreage of millet cultivation. So we would like to, the millet mainstreaming is to bring back the farm to the farm and to the menu of on the millets. These are institutional commitment and coordination. The other dimension is through sustainable and innovative financing, through bringing multi-stakeholder partnerships, by creating enabling environment for enhanced production and inclusion in safety nets, and finally integrating gender and inclusion concerns in the program designs. So in short, we would like to go through those dimensions. So in each of those in each of those 6 dimensions which I just mentioned, there are 4 sub-dimensions. And the first, on the production side, the first dimension, the first indicator is adoption of improved agronomic practices for enhanced productivity. So before going into each of these dimensions, I would invite attention of all the private sector and startups that in each of these stages, you might be having interventions or providing services or improvising the technology or improvising the experience of farmers. And if you are doing it for the millet farmers anywhere from India or from abroad, please feel free to submit your entries. But these are just the pointers, and your solutions might be falling into categories beyond these problem areas. So the first indicator on the production side, whether the startups are providing any capacity building for adoption of improved agronomic practices for enhanced productivity of millets, like system of millet intensification, line transplantation in millets, line sowing, including intercropping in millets, etc. As we have seen, not many startups and private sector agri agencies are into the input supply, along with other services, definitely. So on the second dimension, the farm input and farm mechanization side, how the solutions have been delivered in terms of providing provision of farm inputs, like establishment of a decentralized seed system and composting. Second, there are various tools and equipments which are required across the value chain. So is there any attempt for providing those mechanization as a hiring center, custom hiring center, and whether private sectors have financed in close cooperation with other local banks or the government subsidy or government programs. The third dimension is on the provision of supporting site-specific established irrigational infrastructure. And finally, the hand-holding support in terms of agricultural research and extension. There are various startups from which are incubated at NutriHub. So they're also into the process of providing agricultural research, advancing agricultural research, and sharing progressive farmers' experiences on the benefits of improved agronomic practices. So there are startups, there are FPOs, those who have assumed the role, and there is a combination of other alliances from the startups and other, for example, livelihood programs or through KVKs. So how are those experiences happening? On the second side, on the second dimension, on the storage and transportation. So we know there are various agencies, those who are engaged in warehousing and other operations. And there are certain crops where the collaterals have been provided and there are finances have been accessed by the farmers. So here in this case, is there any provision of infrastructure for the storage of millets? Are there any guidelines or hand-holding support system for effective storage and post-harvest handling of millets to ensure its hygiene standards and quality? Are there any guidelines or technologies introduced for increasing the shelf life of millets? Is there any provision of bearing the handling and transportation costs during the procurement of millets? So these are the 4 areas where we are trying to see what are the initiatives undertaken by the private sector and startups. Third, on the processing side, there are various block level enterprises, there are various district level enterprises, and then there are enterprises which have gone beyond states also, and some are even targeting export market. So with those perspective in mind, what are the initiatives on the productization of the millets? How the value being added, and what kind of processing machinery, for example, biscuits or noodle making machine. In certain instances, there are millet mixes being innovated. So how the value add is happening with the productization side. And then on the processing, how different equipments like dehillers, cleaner, grader, destoner, thresher compiler are being deployed, or whether there have been innovations in those machineries. Then on the grading side, uh, are there any grading guidelines that have been established to procure the millet? Are there any initiative dedicated to the processing of minor millets? So we know that most of the states, there are major millets and then there are minor millets. For example, Polo and Kutki in MP and Chhattisgarh and other states also. So what was happening on the minor millet side? And finally, the technology diffusion in the millet processing industry. I think in all these four dimensions, we have seen a lot of experiences from the startups, and they're engaged in all of these different dimensions. So we are very much looking forward to see entries on these dimensions. Fourth, on the packaging and branding side, uh, lot many agencies, lot many entrepreneurs, agri-entrepreneur, even the self-help group members over a period of time have become so empowered that they are assuming the role of marketing of their own produce, and after having experience of aggregation at the local level. So on the packaging and branding side, we have had huge budget announcement earlier this year, and there has been dedicated government support which has been announced and currently being implemented by various ministries. So on the packaging and branding side, are there any efforts for nutritional leveling for influencing food preferences? So how startups, those who are engaged in millet, in marketing of millet products, how do you see the nutritional labeling, and do you see whether it's changing or influencing the food preferences both in the urban market as well as rural market? And we would like to learn from your experiences on that side. And then, are there any dedicated support to FPOs or aggregators for packaging and branding of millet products to harness full potential in domestic and international markets? So there are various startups or private agencies who are acting as an aggregator, and then they're providing the packaging and branding support. Yesterday, we had someone from Haryana, Madam Pooja Sharma. So she was mentioning when she started a couple of years ago, uh, uh, they have now they have made 10 self-help groups. Those who are engaged in individual, the SHG members are engaged individually in uh, production of various millet-based products. Some of the products they are packaging and they're branding as a part of their SHG. And then rest of the products are being taken by multiple aggregators, and then it's being branded in certain other names, and then being marketed or consumed in an urban setup. So it's like manufactured by SHGs definitely, and then marketed by, that is the agency. So there is this link of branding and so with this also there are multiple geographies where the millets are purely organic, and whether there are initiatives in terms of organic certification in the millet produce. And finally, on the logo or branding of the logo produced in your geography, or whether any startup is helping any government department or any geography in terms of branding of the logo of the millets. On the fifth dimension, on the distribution side, there is a huge role being played by aggregators, and there are a huge role played by agricultural value chain agencies. And these are providing support to farmer cooperatives like farmer collectives like cooperatives, FPOs, and SHGs to increase the wholesale supply. Is there any is there any experience of having front end and back end tie-ups? Any support for matchmaking of farmers with processors, retailers, and independent businesses? Any support for market linkage in terms of linking the production site to the food destination, like establishment of market yards? And finally, startups engaged in the millet export or agencies, those who are engaged in millet export, what are the success stories and what are the case studies from your experiences? And finally, on the consumption side, how the agencies are increasing the household consumption of millets. Is there any strategy deployed by an agency, and whether they see that their profit lines or their margins are increasing? How do agencies increase the awareness of household consumption of millets, and whether any campaigns and whether any awareness materials being prepared? Are there any provision for opening up of mobile outlets or farmer sales outlet? And then the startup capital for setting up or management of kiosks for millet-based products. The various women self-help groups are also acting as startups in various states, and these women SHGs have taken up or assumed the responsibility of startups. So these are the 24 various sub-dimensions on the core millet value chain. And with this, we would like to go to the next stage where we will talk about the millet mainstreaming dimensions. And this millet mainstreaming dimension, these are acting as an enabling environment for all the private sector agencies and startups, or even individuals, those who are aspiring or currently acting as an entrepreneur and aspire to become or establish an entity, profit or non-profit, or enter into the millet value chain. So in this, these are the enabling environment which are giving a playing level feel to the millet startups in various geographies. So you might want to share your experiences that whether there are these provisions in terms of having uh, invited by any advisory body or committee that has been formed in any state or central government, and provided policy advice on how to bring startups or private sector in the entire millet value chain. If you have experience, that would be very interesting to learn from. And then how various millet missions in various states, and also various livelihood missions are being asked, are asking you to provide technical backstopping. So, for example, private sector like Walmart, for example, uh, they've entered into a partnership with marketing of the millet produced by, I guess, IAMR or ICRISAT farmer groups. So these are market linkages. So they might have been involved in technical backstopping also. Also, in terms of whether there are dedicated financial and human resources to support the millet mainstreaming initiatives in your own company, where you might be engaged in processing of, you might be engaged in other and crops other than millet in the value chain in your transactions. But do you have any plans to support the millet mainstreaming? And also with the multiple convergent activities happening at the state level, at the district level, and at the national level, these provides a lot of opportunities of also to participate in the in those processes. Second dimension is on the sustainable and innovative financing. So we know from the state's perspective, the total state budget and its expenditure and its annual plan and approved budget spending, these are the things which we have asked. But on the fourth, there are definitely the sources of financing that is coming beyond the government departments. And these are from the CSR funds. These are from the national and international funding agencies. And also there are funds coming from the private sector. So there are various private sector agencies, those who are engaged engaged with their own corpus, with their own funds, and they've also mobilized from various other sources also. So how you have deployed any of those innovative sources of financing in addressing the millet value chain? You would like to, we would be very happy to receive entries on those. Then on the multi-stakeholder partnership side, and this is where the entire landscape is currently engaged, and most of the startups, most of the private sector agencies are engaged on this cross-fertilization of various forms of modalities of partnership. So whether your startup, whether your agency, whether your private agency is in partnership, is having any partnership with any NGO, any research institutions, or organizing any in-field demonstrations or research partnerships or incubation, or coming up with innovations. And then whether any specific partnership with agri incubators, with corporates, or the commercialization of the millet value chain. Are there any specific engagement of your startup with the community? For instance, self-help groups, the farmer producer organizations, the primary agricultural cooperative society, so allow their participation and also enhance their value, by bringing value add to their millet value chain. On the fourth dimension, there is enabling environment for enhanced production and inclusion in safety nets. So there is huge opportunity here, as the government is providing in a lot of places the incentive support or direct benefit transfer for the adoption of improved agronomic practices for millets. So for some places it's for a year, some places it's for 3 years. So the cost of I mean, the yield of millet compared to an area where there is no such initiative is easier to enter into for the private sector. So do you have any experiences where you have benefited from that from aggregation perspective? And then are you playing any role in establishment of millet procurement system and its functionality? And then we come across various agricultural agencies, those who are providing climate resilient services. So there are weather insurance and there are crop insurance, which is ensuring the yield and also compensating in case of losses. So there are various agencies engaged in those processes, and at the same time providing access to capital and access to other machineries, other products and services. So with that perspective, I think the startups are also engaged in providing the distribution support in terms of ICDS and midday meal program and supplementary nutrition programs. So take home rations, is any startup engaged anywhere and providing support for those services? And finally, on the gender and inclusion side, there are four areas. And do you have any experience in terms of engaging with marginalized groups like tribal community and women? And then whether we have taken into consideration the drudgery of women and any intervention initiated to reduce those drudgery, how it could have been done in terms of introducing the equipment or machinery during production and processing stage, and even for consumption stage as well, like the millet mixie, which I just mentioned. And then provisioning of allowing landless and tenant farmers to participate. And finally, provisioning of specialist HR cadre like community resource persons. So these are 5 into 4, 20 different dimensions within the mainstreaming and 24 dimensions, which I just mentioned in the previous slide on the millet value chain. So with this, we have our millet mainstreaming framework established, and I would like to go to the next stage where we would introduce the MAGP initiative, and then it would be easier for the audience, both who have joined us online on YouTube, and at the same time, the audience which is with us in this workshop. All of you are invited to and requested to kindly submit the good practices of your startups in your state, in your country, both in Africa and Asia, around millet mainstreaming on the MEGP web portal. And this is the address of the MEGP web portal where the submissions would be entered. We will demonstrate this once we have done with these slides. And the entries are invited till 18th of September 2022. That would be the closing day. So what we are trying to do once again to revisit, it is the aim of mapping exchange of good practices in Asia and Africa will support the documentation of good practices and lessons learned. And it will facilitate an experience sharing among developing countries from Asia and Africa. The compendium of good practices is targeted to better understand what are those initiatives, what it entails, and also trigger informed decisions if one wishes to scale up or replicate the idea. It can also unlock various South-South and South-South and triangular cooperation pathways. The deployment of modalities like study visits, expert deployment, demonstration sites, peer coaching networks, policy dialogues, technology transfer or knowledge transfer. These are the various modalities and possibly would take in terms of investment promotion as well. The categories are invited in primarily in two main categories, and the millet value chain and mainstreaming dimensions. And these are the categories which I just mentioned in detail in the millet mainstreaming framework. So we would not revisit each of those, but this was to enable that in which category would your submission, would your solution would fall, and where in which category would you be submitting. So that was for the purpose of triggering that decision. And finally, a dedicated category on millet recipe is introduced to enhance the knowledge on the cooking methods and develop diversified millet recipes that could be included in the daily diet, both urban and rural areas. And there are not many you could see in various places, various areas. There are various recipes which are being introduced, and there have been efforts to document them. And then there are also areas where the traditional and indigenous community practices and certain traditional practices have been forgotten. So this aims to capture those forgotten practices as well for the revival of those practices. So the geography, we know the organization and partners, practitioners from, we know that we are targeting this workshop for the private sector and startups, and obviously the FPOs, SSGs, PACs, cooperatives, and individuals are eligible. And the only red flag is the solutions which are at the conceptual stage will not be eligible to be considered as the good practices, something which has been demonstrated, something which has been introduced. So what are the benefits? What are the incentives it's offering to participants like you if you wish to submit your good practices or solutions? So a few of them, there will be access to bridge initiatives like back supporting millet startups. There are various startups, those who are in different stages of maturity, and there will be a platform where those startups would be provided bridge initiative in terms of there might be the different departments who might be interested in offering services to you in terms of aggregation. There might be districts where they're struggling with various initiatives, and at the same time you are present there. Then there will be close partnership with those stakeholders. And then there will be access to regional platforms for learning and dissemination. There will be access to networking platforms, including donors, innovation lab, research institutes, government departments, etc. So under ODOP initiative, we have 19 districts currently implementing millets as a primary product. And there are not many initiatives happening. But at the same time, there is enough scope of various startups and private agencies to participate there. There will be linkages with the government department for potential scale up, and finally, support for the publications. The evaluation criteria, five criteria which we have devised. Please consider the innovation which we are bringing, the novelty of the solution, how original it is. And I guess originality is not only in terms of in which stages of the value chain you are functional, but in terms of what innovations you are bringing in terms of improvisation of the services, improvisation of the product, anywhere those innovations, or even innovation in terms of delivery, service delivery. The practicality, how it is addressing significant current or emerging need. Third, whether the gender inclusion concerns are taken into consideration and the solution has the ability to reach the last mile and to the most marginalized and the excluded, particularly women. Whether it has created outcomes at scale and it has the potential to improve in other geographies as well. In terms of is there a potential for its scale up and alignment with the public-private systems. So these are the 5 criteria which we have proposed for this evaluation, and based on that, the entries would be assessed. Our honorable jury members, Dr. Arvind K. Padi, who till a couple of weeks back was the director of Director of Country Relations ICRISAT. He was the chair, but then he has gone back to its parent cadre and he has withdrawn. So there will be new chair who would be joining as our head of the jury. And then there are 4 members, honorable members like Madam Subha Thakur, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Madam Dr. Sridevi Annapurna Singh, Director CFTRI, Dr. Vilas Tonapi Sahab, ex-director Indian Institute of Millet Research, and Madam Joanna Potaka, the executive director and co-founder of Food 2013. So they are our honorable jury members, and our member secretaries are Madam Dr. Neelam Patel, who is the senior advisor here at NITI, and Madam Sudhanya Pathankar, who is heading the Climate Resilience DRR and SSTC unit in Gulf Food Program India. So now we would like to go and discuss the process of submission. Let us log in here. This one, okay, fine. Could someone confirm whether my screen is you can see my screen, the agri.niti.gov.in.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So this is the link which has been shared, and it is there on the agri.niti.gov.in/MAGP 2022. And you could see that we have all the details about the initiative, and you can go and see what has been done so far. And as you can see that we launched it on the 19th of July. So you could see it was also live streamed. So you could see the YouTube live YouTube video of that launch. Then there is a concept note, both in English as well as Hindi. And this is what you could see the details of this MEGP initiative. And one second, please. You could also see in Hindi and the millets mainstreaming framework. Shortly, there will be a concept note also in French language for our countries in Africa and Asia who speaks French, where the primary language is French. You could also see there are user manuals. So in terms of each and every stage or step in terms of logging in, and you can see the instructions how to register, how to log in, if you've forgotten the password, details about the initiative, and in terms of how to submit the application form, filling various part of forms. So I have already registered myself, so I would go and log in. So you could see that now we are on the web page where we have application form, country name. Once those who are from India, they would do India. But then if someone is from Ghana, they would do Ghana. Enter state name. This is for Indian entry, and providing the name of the state or union territory, providing the name of the district, agroclimatic zone. These are non-mandatory details. So these were more in terms of soliciting entries from KVKs and from the government departments. Also, there are agroclimatic zones, soil type, rainfall, temperature, and type of millet. So these are some of the geographic details information. And then application details. So you could, in your case, you could identify yourself as private or startups, select category of the application. As we just demonstrated various stages of millet value chain and mainstreaming dimensions, and also mentioned about the millet recipes. So you could select any of these category. For instance, if you are submitting in terms of millet recipes, you have to submit only your millet recipe and details of the village or block or district or the state where it is consumed. And here you have to provide the narration maximum in 500 words. And at the same time, there are no other questions for the millet recipes. And you can upload illustration or figures or photographs that explain something of this solution within the limit of 1 MB. It has to be PDF. And then providing only details of the name, email, phone number, and address. You can save the form and you can either submit the form in one go. So this is for the someone who would like to submit on the millet recipe side. And then if you want to submit on the millet value chain, for example, so you see there are millet subcategory. And these subcategories are the same categories which we just demonstrated the various stages in the inner wheel of that millet framework. The production, storage and transportation, processing, packaging and branding, distribution and consumption. You can select more than one as well. So if your startup or if your agency is engaged in packaging and branding, but at the same time is also engaged in processing. So you could select more than one category and submit the story there. If you want to submit only on the processing side, you could do that. For instance, if you want to go for consumption, so it allows you to select categories which are more than one. And then, so let's say we take an example of consumption. Here you have to provide the name of the good practices or the solution which you are proposing, your name of the organization, and then how this good practices, we have to provide a summary and which can be tweeted. So the tweet maximum limit is 280 characters. So it has to be precise summary of the good practices in one line. And then the pitch. The pitch in terms of maximum 100 words. It has to provide details of the problem it addresses, the solution it offers, and the impact it can create. And then the problem analysis. Once again, maximum 150 words. Describe the specific problem you are working to attempt to solve. It should be in the scale of the problem, the people who are being affected by it, the most relevant aspects of the problem that relates to your solution. And then the fourth part is, what was your solution? Describe good practices in details, maximum 200 words, providing details of the processes and approaches and how it is being used. Who are the target population? Please elaborate how it is benefiting the most marginalized and excluded groups in the last mile. What are the results or impacts of the practice? How the solution has been implemented and describing the scale, sample size, scale, outreach. Potential for its upscaling and replicability. And what are the success factors, drivers of change? And also, are there any dilemmas and barriers? And how the solutions are novel or bringing the value add. So these are the few of the criteria, as we mentioned, the 5 criteria. So these questions are trying to answer those qualitative aspect of those criteria, and that would be useful to assess the solutions which you are proposing. And then uploading attachments, and then form submitted by the name, email, phone number, and address. So this is the application form. And as we mentioned that both me and Saloni from the Niti Aayog and the World Food Program, we stand ready to respond to any queries. You can write to us, you can call us at our email ID is here. And we also have given our phone numbers in case you want to reach out directly to call us. Please feel free to do so, and we will be very happy to respond into any queries and navigate the successful submission of your solutions. So with this, our presentation from the technical side is over, and we would be very happy to receive any feedback from our colleagues from Invest India and any suggestions how best to take it forward. Over from my side, please. Harsh, you're on mute.
Still can't hear you, Harsh.
Hi, Pranay, am I audible now?
Yes, please, Harsh.
Great. So I think there was some glitch in my system.
Okay.
I'm walking us through the detailed application portal as well as the overview of the run. It's a very good opportunity for the startups that are venturing into this. What we have seen is that I am not just a startup, say the FPOs, but also the processors are quite indulged in the millet value chain.
Harsh, I can't hear you very clearly.
I'm audible now?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So what I was trying to say that, in the millets value chain, we see a lot of companies coming into the picture, and not just the startups, but also the major players who are venturing into this field. Whether we talk about, and we see in our daily lives millets coming into the value chain, as we see on the breakfast table, starting with the muesli or the breakfast cereals, to the extent that the energy bars or the health bars that are gaining traction among the youth, and also a big portfolio in our daily, meals. So I would also, we would, as Invest India, we would also reach out to the various startups that we are in touch with for the millets, for propagating the MGEP initiative, and if we can mainstream the best practices, of course, the WFP and its expertise over the entire globe, that would be something that the startups and the processors would be able to leverage from. So we would also, from our end, reach out to the various startups through IMR. Also, we'll reach out to them and try to propagate this as much as possible. So if in any case, Pranay, if you want any additional support from our end, we'll be happy to help. We can also propagate it via the embassies, the different embassies across the globe. We can also reach out to the high commissions. We can have those, like as a precursor to the 2023 International Year of Millets. We are planning some events with the embassies. So if time permits us by then, we will be happy to incorporate this program in such ventures. So I'll keep it posted time to time, whether and how, what would be the final modalities of it, and we would like essentially be happy to host a WFP as well as in collaboration with Niti Aayog.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Harsh. Comment from other colleagues from Invest India, please feel free. Madam Annapurna.
I'd just like to, I mean, I'll essentially be repeating what Harsh said, that we would love to get in touch with the startups at Niti Aayog and WFP have linked to this particular initiative. And millets obviously is a focus sector for us. Not just the agri team, but the food processing team at Invest India is also working towards driving production, exports. And again, as I'd said earlier, any sort of policy support that the startups would suggest or you guys would suggest is something that we'd be willing to work on and take forward as well.
Thanks a lot, Annapurna, and thanks a lot, Harsh. So we look forward to being in touch with startup community and organizing various events in close cooperation with Invest India. And also this approximately 1 hour explainer video would be helpful, and we could amplify this on the social media for wider outreach, and a message from our millet mainstreaming team from the WFP and the Niti Aayog. You are cordially invited. A message to all the startups and to all the private sector agencies. You are cordially invited to participate in this process, and at the same time demonstrate the solutions which are currently being innovated and have been in practice for long on the millet value chain, and not only on the major millet, but also on the minor millets. And the recent thrust of Government of India, the Startup in India campaign, these are very heartening to see. There are a lot many initiatives, more than 500 startups from our innovation hub at IIMR, at Nutri Hub, and then ICAR supported institutions and the KVKs, and also the MOFP initiatives of one district, one product, and the initiatives from SFSC, Small Farmer Agribusiness Consortium, Agriculture Consortium. There are various agencies, more than 100 farmer producer organizations, those who are engaged in millet value chain. So we invite all of you to be a part of this initiative, and also to our SHG members and farmers. to be a part of this, and also agri entrepreneurs. And This is the timeline, and 18th of September 2022 is the last date for submission. And we look forward to seeing you in other events where we are disseminating this over coming 3 to 4 weeks. And also, we look forward to receiving your calls or mails if you have any difficulty accessing the website or in submission of in the process of submission. And the last day for the submission is 18th of September 2022. So with this, I thank all of you who have joined in our workshop, and those who have joined us online on YouTube, those who have been watching YouTube live streaming. Thanks a lot once again. So on behalf of the NITI Aayog on the World Food Program, and also on behalf of Invest India, if I may do so, we thank all of you and look forward to receiving the applications. Thanks a lot. Okay.